We just sat there for a long time, in utter bitter silence. Stared. Not at the wall, just at this crippling beige. Didn't breathe. For 100 short years or 10 lifetime-long seconds. Or honestly, probably around 20 minutes if I had to make a guess. But 20 minutes can be however long you need it to be. And finally, it's like some angel saw me and took pity on me and screamed at me this hurricane of air into my lungs, and I would have been grateful for it. Only it was too much and too fast. And I didn't want to speak yet and break the still silence into about a million clattering shards. But I had to, because if I didn't, the pressure was too much. It would have just kept filling until it burst, or not burst, but maybe implode. Some disgusting balloon of too sullied flesh and purple blood and salty marrow and stinking maggot-infested intestines and just all the guts I never had. And I would have died on impact, which honestly might have been nicer, but you never think the opportunity will come when it does. You don't hold your breath until it all falls apart. You gasp for air. Even if you don't want to, even if you're promised yourself the next time, but you just can't, because for some reason that I will never be able to understand, there's this primal desire to keep on existing. So you gasp for air. And I did. But it wasn't a gasp above the water. It's like I was still drowning. I was still enveloped in these cold waves, but I wasn't hurt. Because I wasn't a person. I was, for just a few seconds, this magnificent force of nature that he finally had to reckon with. I was the ocean, and the minute I opened my mouth, everything came rushing out. All the fears we both had, the insecurities and isolation, and this medieval torture of my soul. And all I had to do was just, it didn't even take a lot of words is the thing. But it doesn't matter, because really you can say a lot no matter how many words you actually use. You know them better than anyone. Thomas Eakins just finished with you and hung you on a poorly painted wall and probably looked at you again until he sold you. Like this. Prostitute of his own creation. And you sit in this dark, empty corner of one of the most famous museums in the world, and nobody cares. Nobody cares if you were real. Nobody cares who you are or were, and no matter how many curious children and pretentious art majors and frightened adults and lonely old people wonder about, what could he be? He's so lost in thought, it's so charming. They never stay here long enough to realize what it could be. Do you even know? What are you thinking? If I were you, I would be thinking about no matter how many people stalk right past you to see Van Gogh, and even no matter how many people really stop and look and listen until they understand, who say, honey, I love the composition, and here the chiaroscuro really heightens the emotional tension and response. Does it matter? Does it matter at all what anybody thinks if you have to sit there and hear it all and know that the person who breathed into you being didn't even care? That he looked at you until he was finished and then he gave you away for far less than what you were worth, and he kept at the profit and left you barren and so cold. Don't you think his silence said and says a lot more than any tourist could ever dare to think? What? The silence. The silence before Maybe in that silence I said all of the things I regret. Maybe he apologized. I don't know. But that's what I mean. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we said to each other in the silence, even if that was a lot more. Even if that will stay with you the most. Because at Christmas, when my mom asks where you are, When my mom asks where he is, I'll have to say what happened. What happened on the surface, what happened objectively, and what happened in the screenplay version. And as soon as I do, she won't forgive me, and she won't care. No one will. Because what happened in the screenplay version was beat. Then, me. I hate you. And then he says, I know. And then the light changes. Shadows melt inward from the corners of the frame until they reach the edges of this painting, and then your trembling fingers, and then the last glint of a tear, and then it's gone. Maybe it's black, but a warm kind of black that swallows you into death sweetly and slowly. And you hear his footprints quietly descend down some grand marble staircase, and you hear a woman crying and crying, and then you hear her ask for someone to listen. And you do. And then end.